Everyone saw me as just another IT guy running backups at 3 a.m. My wife saw me as her ticket to easy money. But she overlooked one detail. I monitor every single data transfer. The server room hummed with its usual mechanical symphony at 2:15 a.m. I adjusted my headset and settled into the worn chair that had molded to my body after 5 years of night shifts. The blue LED status lights painted everything in that familiar cold glow, rows upon rows of black server chassis stretching into the distance like some digital cathedral. My coffee steamed in the Neuraltech Solutions mug that had seen better days, the company logo barely visible through years of dishwasher cycles. "All right, Prometheus cluster," I muttered to my screens, pulling up the backup maintenance schedule.
Let's see what you've been up to.
The October air conditioning kicked in with a soft whoosh, maintaining the precise 68-degree temperature that kept millions of dollars in AI algorithms from overheating. At home, Dylan was probably sprawled across his bed, still wearing his superhero pajamas. Amber would be working late again. Seemed like her marketing job at Quantum Mind AI had her pulling longer hours lately. I'd stopped waiting up for her around midnight. I clicked through the routine backup verification, my fingers moving automatically across the keyboard. After 5 years on this shift, I could navigate these systems half asleep. The Prometheus AI development servers were Neuraltech's crown jewels, neural network algorithms that could revolutionize machine learning if they ever made it to market. My job was simple: keep them running, keep them secure, keep them backed up. The first anomaly appeared at exactly 2:47 a.m. in the transfer logs. I blinked, leaning closer to my monitor. The timestamp showed a massive data transfer, 847 gigabytes, moving from the Prometheus servers to an external connection. That was wrong. Automated backups were scheduled for 3 a.m. and typically ran around 200 gigabytes. This was nearly 4 times larger and happened 43 minutes early. What the hell? I pulled up the detailed logs on my secondary monitor, the green text scrolling past as I searched for similar patterns. The fluorescent lights overhead reflected off my glasses, making me squint as I dove deeper into the data. My coffee grew cold, forgotten, as concentration took over completely. There, another one. October 12th, 2:31 a.m. 892 gigabytes transferred to the same external endpoint. And another on October 8th. My stomach started to tighten as I realized this wasn't a one-time glitch. "The logs don't lie," I whispered to myself, one of my old mantras from tech school. "They tell you exactly what happened and when." Over the next 3 days, I became obsessed. Every spare moment during my shift was spent digging through historical transfer logs, building a spreadsheet that grew more disturbing with each entry. 23 unauthorized transfers spanning back to March 2022. Each one occurred during my night shift, always between 2 and 4 a.m., always accessing the most sensitive Prometheus AI algorithms, the neural network architectures that took our development team years to create. The pattern was methodical, deliberate. This wasn't some automated system gone rogue or a configuration error. Someone was systematically stealing Neuraltech's most valuable intellectual property, and they'd been doing it for over 2 years. But here's what really made my hands shake as I stared at the security logs. Every single transfer was authorized using Level 4 security clearance. My clearance level. My credentials. Thursday morning, I sat across from Amber at our kitchen table while Dylan demolished a bowl of Lucky Charms, and watched cartoons on his tablet. The morning light streamed through our windows, making everything feel normal and domestic, a sharp contrast to the digital theft I'd been uncovering in the sterile server room. "Honey, I found something weird at work," I said, stirring sugar into my coffee. "Someone's been accessing our servers using my security credentials." Big data transfers, middle of the night. Amber glanced up from her phone, where she'd been scrolling through what looked like work emails. "Probably just system updates or automated backups," she said, her tone dismissive. "You worry too much about work stuff, Steve." "No, this is different. We're talking about 847 gigabytes of proprietary AI algorithms being copied to external—" "Sweetie, you wouldn't understand the complexities of corporate IT infrastructure," she interrupted, not looking up from her screen. "These big companies have all sorts of automated processes running. I deal with this kind of thing at Quantum Mind all the time." Something about her casual dismissal bothered me. Usually Amber was interested in my technical discoveries, asking follow-up questions about server architectures and security protocols. She had a master's degree in computer science, after all. But this morning she seemed distracted, eager to change the subject. "Your job keeping you busy lately?" I asked, watching her face carefully. "You've been coming home pretty late this week." "Marketing campaigns are intense right now," she replied quickly, finally looking up. "We're launching a new AI product next month. Project Minerva. Lots of late nights with the development team." Dylan looked up from his cereal. "Mom, can you help me with my science project tonight?" "We'll see, baby. Mommy might have to work late again." After they left, Amber dropping Dylan at school before heading to her office, I sat in the quiet kitchen and thought about her reaction. In 15 years of marriage, I'd learned to read her moods, her tells. Something felt off about the way she'd deflected my concerns, the way she'd avoided eye contact when talking about her work schedule. That evening, I dove deeper into the security badge access logs. Neuraltech's system tracked every swipe, every door entry, every movement through our facility. My Level 4 clearance gave me access to the Prometheus servers, the backup systems, and the secure storage areas where we kept offline archives. But as I scrolled through the data, my hands started to get clammy. The logs showed my badge being used at impossible times, entries into server rooms when I was documented as being in the break room or bathroom, simultaneous swipes at different security checkpoints as if my badge existed in 2 places at once. Someone had cloned my security credentials. They knew my work schedule intimately, knew exactly when I'd be away from my workstation long enough to access restricted systems without being noticed. The data center felt oppressive that night, the constant hum of cooling fans and hard drives creating a white noise that seemed to press against my skull. I pulled up the security camera footage for the suspicious access times, my heart rate climbing as I navigated through the digital surveillance system. The cameras were positioned at every secure entrance, recording in grainy black and white that made everything look like an old crime movie. I found the timestamp for the October 15th breach and hit play. A figure in dark clothing approached the Prometheus server room door at 2:45 a.m. They moved confidently, like someone familiar with the facility layout. The person kept their head down, hood pulled up to obscure their face from the cameras. Smart, professional. But as they raised their arm to swipe the cloned badge, something caught my attention. A glint of metal on their wrist. A watch. I paused the footage, enhancing the image as much as the system would allow. The watch was distinctive, silver, with an unusual rectangular face and what looked like an antique design. Expensive. Definitely not something a typical corporate spy would wear during a break-in. Too memorable, too traceable. I screenshot the image, my pulse hammering as I stared at that watch. Something about it nagged at me, like a word on the tip of my tongue that wouldn't quite form. Where have I seen that before? I grabbed my phone and scrolled through my photos, searching for any image that might contain that watch. Family dinners, weekend trips, Dylan's birthday parties, there had to be something. Then I found it. A photo from our anniversary dinner last month. Amber's arm reaching across the table for the wine bottle, that distinctive rectangular watch clearly visible on her wrist. The same silver band, the same unusual face design. My stomach dropped like a stone. I compared the photo to the security footage again, zooming in until the pixels blurred. No doubt about it, the watch in the break-in footage belonged to my wife. The server room felt smaller suddenly, the walls pressing in as the implications hit me. Amber had been using my cloned security badge to steal from Neuraltech. My own wife was the corporate spy I'd been hunting. I needed to call Marcus Chen immediately. During my lunch break, I stepped outside into the parking lot where cell reception was stronger. My hands were still shaking as I dialed Marcus's direct line. "Security, this is Marcus." "Marcus, it's Steve Kowalski. I need to talk to you about those suspicious access logs I mentioned." "What did you find?" His voice sharpened with interest. "Someone's been using a cloned version of my security badge. Multiple unauthorized entries into the Prometheus server rooms over the past several months. I've got security footage showing the perpetrator and—" I paused, the words sticking in my throat. "I think I know who it is." "We need to investigate this immediately," Marcus said, his voice tense. "Can you compile a comprehensive report of all suspicious activity? Every timestamp, every file access, every anomaly you can document?" "Already working on it," I replied, watching a delivery truck navigate the parking lot. "Marcus, this is bigger than just unauthorized access. The data transfers I'm seeing, we're talking about terabytes of proprietary algorithms. This could be industrial espionage." Jesus.
How long has this been going on?
Based on the logs? At least 18 months. Maybe longer. There was silence on the other end, then Marcus exhaled slowly. "Steve, if this is what we think it is, we're looking at a federal crime. Millions of dollars in stolen intellectual property. This could destroy Neuraltech's competitive advantage." I walked back inside, the fluorescent lights of the break room buzzing overhead. The vending machine hummed as I fed quarters into it, needing something to occupy my hands while my mind raced. A bag of pretzels dropped into the slot with a mechanical thunk. "I'll have the full report ready by end of shift," I told Marcus. "Complete timeline, security footage, access logs, everything." "Good. And Steve? Keep this between us for now. If there's a mole in the company, we can't risk word getting back to them." After hanging up, I sat at one of the break room tables, spreading my preliminary notes across the surface. This was no longer just unusual system behavior. This was corporate espionage, and somehow my security credentials were at the center of it. The weekend couldn't come fast enough. Saturday morning, Amber announced she was taking Dylan to soccer practice. "You don't mind staying home, do you, honey? I know you've been stressed about work lately." "Not at all," I said, forcing normalcy into my voice. "I've got some paperwork to catch up on anyway." After they left, the house felt unusually quiet. I spread printouts across our dining room table, security logs, access timestamps, file transfer records. Each data theft corresponded perfectly with my night shift schedule, suggesting the perpetrator had detailed knowledge of my work patterns. As I organized the evidence chronologically, a pattern emerged that made my blood run cold. The thefts weren't random. They targeted specific projects. The neural network algorithms that Neuraltech had spent 3 years developing. The machine learning frameworks worth millions in R&D investment. Someone was systematically stealing our most valuable intellectual property. I was typing my preliminary findings when I noticed Amber's laptop bag in the hallway, slightly unzipped. She must have forgotten it in her rush to get Dylan ready for soccer. A glint of silver caught my eye from the side pocket. My hands trembled as I approached the bag. There, nestled among charging cables and business cards, was the watch. The same distinctive rectangular face, the same silver band I'd seen in the security footage. I pulled it out carefully, as if it might explode in my hands. The weight of it felt significant, substantial, expensive. I'd bought this watch for Amber's birthday 2 years ago, thinking she'd appreciate the vintage design. Now, it was evidence of her betrayal. I carried it to my laptop, pulling up the enhanced security footage. The match was perfect, every detail, every angle. My wife of 10 years, the mother of my child, had been systematically stealing from my employer using my cloned security credentials. The afternoon sunlight, streaming through our kitchen window, felt surreal as I processed this betrayal. Everything made sense now. Her late nights, her dismissive attitude about my security concerns, her intimate knowledge of my work schedule.
She'd been playing me for months, maybe years.
The sound of car doors slamming in the driveway snapped me back to reality. I quickly returned the watch to her bag, arranging it exactly as I'd found it, then gathered my papers and laptop. When Amber and Dylan came through the front door, I was sitting at the kitchen table with my work spread out, trying to look normal. "How was practice, buddy?" I asked Dylan, ruffling his hair as he ran past toward the TV. "Good! I scored 2 goals," he called back, already absorbed in turning on his video games. Amber moved through our routine normally, helping Dylan with his cleats, starting dinner preparations, discussing weekend plans. But now every action felt calculated, performed. "How was work this week?" she asked casually, stirring pasta sauce. "Any more of those weird computer issues?" Her tone sounded too casual, too practiced, like she'd rehearsed this conversation. "Still investigating," I replied, forcing my voice to stay level. "These security anomalies are more complex than I initially thought." I watched her face for tells, noting how she quickly changed the subject to Dylan's upcoming school project. The kitchen felt like a stage where we were both performing normalcy while hiding devastating secrets. "Did you get a chance to look at those permission slips I left on the counter?" she asked, not meeting my eyes. "Not yet. I'll check them after dinner." She nodded, stirring the sauce with mechanical precision. "The school needs them back by Monday. It's for the field trip to the Science Museum." Normal conversation, normal domestic concerns. But underneath, I could feel the weight of what I knew pressing against my chest, like a physical force. That night, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, while Amber slept beside me. Her steady breathing felt like a stranger's. I mentally reviewed 2 years of subtle signs I'd missed. Her sudden interest in my work schedules, questions about security protocols, the expensive jewelry and clothes she claimed were work bonuses. The bedroom darkness amplified my racing thoughts as I realized our entire marriage might have been built on deception. How long had she been planning this? How much had she already stolen? Tomorrow, I'd have to decide whether to confront her directly or continue gathering evidence. Either choice would destroy our family as Dylan knew it. But I couldn't let her continue stealing from Neuraltech. My professional integrity meant everything to me, and she'd turned me into an unwitting accomplice in corporate espionage. The next morning, while Amber showered, I accessed her home computer. She'd left it logged in, a mistake that would cost her everything. Her marketing job's overtime records were easily accessible through her company portal. I cross-referenced them with the data theft timestamps, my hands trembling as I built a comparison chart. March 15th, Amber's timesheet showed overtime until 11 p.m. Neuraltech's logs showed my badge accessing the Prometheus servers at 2:47 a.m. April 22nd, overtime until midnight. Unauthorized access at 3:15 a.m. May 18th, overtime until 10:30 p.m. Server breach at 2:22 a.m. The correlation was mathematically impossible to be coincidental. As water ran upstairs, I printed the comparison chart with trembling hands. My wife hadn't been working late at her marketing job. She'd been stealing millions of dollars in AI algorithms using my security access, destroying both our marriage and my career in the process. The timestamps of unauthorized access perfectly matched Amber's claimed overtime schedule at her marketing job. I sat in my home office at 6 a.m., the coffee growing cold beside my keyboard as I scrolled through 3 weeks of server access logs. The timestamps glowed on my laptop screen like accusations. Every unauthorized entry perfectly aligned with Amber's claimed overtime at Quantum Mind AI. My fingers hovered over the keyboard, part of me desperately wanting to dismiss this as some bizarre coincidence. But 22 years in IT had trained that instinct out of me. The logs don't lie. They tell you exactly what happened and when. The house creaked above as Amber moved around, getting Dylan ready for school. I minimized the window, my heart hammering against my ribs like a failing hard drive. The familiar sounds of morning routine felt foreign now, contaminated by suspicion. March 15th. Overtime until 11 p.m. Server breach at 2:47 a.m. March 22nd. Late client meeting until 9:30 p.m. Unauthorized access at 3:15 a.m. April 3rd. Working weekend, home by midnight. Data transfer at 1:45 a.m. Each line of data felt like a punch to the gut. I rubbed my eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses, hoping the correlation would disappear. It didn't.
How was your shift last night?
Amber asked at breakfast, buttering Dylan's toast with practiced efficiency. Her tone was light, conversational, but I caught her watching my face in the reflection of the kitchen window. Anything interesting happen at the data center? Just routine maintenance, I replied, forcing normalcy into my voice, while Dylan chatted about his upcoming science project on solar systems. Mom, did you know Jupiter has 79 moons? Dylan bounced in his chair, syrup-sticky fingers gesturing wildly. That's fascinating, sweetie. Amber smiled, but her eyes stayed on me. Steve, you seem tired. Long night? Her questions felt different now, less like spousal concern, more like intelligence gathering. The morning sunlight streaming through our kitchen window felt harsh and exposing, highlighting every micro-expression I tried to hide.
Dad, you're not eating your eggs.
Dylan observed with 8-year-old directness. I looked down at my plate, surprised to find it untouched. Just thinking about work stuff, buddy. Amber's laugh was bright, musical. You and your servers. Sometimes I think you care more about those machines than your own family. The joke landed like a slap. I managed a weak smile and took a bite of cold eggs that tasted like cardboard. I arrived at Neuraltech 30 minutes early for my night shift, using my level 4 clearance to access the main server room. The familiar hum of cooling systems and blinking blue status lights usually calmed my nerves, but tonight everything felt charged with electricity and suspicion. The server room stretched before me, rows of black monoliths humming with the digital heartbeat of a Fortune 500 company. Each rack contained millions of dollars worth of processing power and proprietary data. Data that someone had been stealing using my credentials. I pulled up the backup logs from March 2022, when Amber started her new position at Quantum Mind AI. My methodical nature took over. If there was a pattern here, I'd find it.
The timestamp,
2:47 a.m., appeared repeatedly in the unauthorized access logs, always during my scheduled patrol rounds, when I'd be 3 floors away checking physical security. Someone knew my routine. Someone who lived with me, who heard me complain about the mandatory security walks, who knew exactly when I'd be away from the monitoring station. My hands moved across the keyboard with mechanical precision, pulling server logs, cross-referencing timestamps, building a digital timeline of betrayal. The evidence mounted with each query, each correlation, each damning data point.
you're here early.
Marcus Chen's voice made me jump. I hadn't heard him enter the server room, too absorbed in the access records glowing on my secondary terminal. Just catching up on some system analysis, I replied, without looking up, fingers still dancing across the keyboard. Marcus had been the security manager for 5 years, long enough to read people like server logs. His trained eye noticed my badge reader access records pulled up on screen, the unusual intensity in my posture, the way my shoulders carried tension like a loaded spring. "Everything okay, Steve? You seem—" He paused, choosing his words carefully. Focused, more than usual. I finally looked up, meeting his concerned gaze. Marcus was good people, ex-military, straight shooter, the kind of guy who'd have your back in a crisis. But this wasn't his problem. Not yet.
Yeah, just trying to understand some anomalies in the backup system.
Probably nothing. He nodded slowly, but I caught the way his eyes lingered on my screen before he moved on to check the environmental controls. Something in my demeanor had triggered his security instincts. In this business, paranoia was a survival skill. The annual Neurotech family picnic buzzed with conversation and barbecue smoke. Families clustered around picnic tables under the Texas sun, while kids ran between the playground equipment. I should have been relaxed, enjoying the rare opportunity to see my co-workers outside their natural habitat of server rooms and cubicles. Instead, I watched from across the pavilion as Amber chatted with Marcus Chen near the dessert table. Her laugh was bright and engaging, the perfect corporate spouse making connections. But my trained ear caught fragments of their conversation carried on the afternoon breeze. Steve's so dedicated to those late-night system checks. Backup procedures must be fascinating. Security protocols seem so complex. Marcus answered politely, but his body language shifted subtly, shoulders squaring, stance widening slightly. 5 years of military training and corporate security work had taught him to recognize intelligence gathering disguised as small talk. "Amber's asking a lot of technical questions," he said, when I approached with 2 bottles of water. "She's always been curious about my work." The lie tasted bitter. "Wants to understand what keeps me at the office so late." Marcus accepted the water, but his expression remained thoughtful. "Curiosity's one thing, but some of those questions—" He trailed off, diplomatic but pointed. Dylan ran up, grass stains on his knees and a huge grin on his face. "Dad, Mom said we could get ice cream on the way home." "Sounds great, buddy." I ruffled his hair, grateful for the distraction. But I caught Marcus watching Amber with the same analytical expression he used when reviewing security footage. That night, I accessed the Prometheus AI development servers, Neuraltech's most classified project. The backup logs revealed the scope of the theft: 847 gigabytes of proprietary neural network algorithms transferred over 18 months. Each massive file movement occurred during my patrol rounds, precisely when I'd be checking physical security in distant server racks. My hands shook as I cross-referenced the data with Amber's work calendar, pulled from her shared Google account. Every transfer corresponded to a day she'd claimed overtime at Quantum Mind AI. The correlation was mathematically impossible to ignore, a perfect storm of opportunity and betrayal. The evidence spread across my monitor like a digital autopsy, each timestamp a wound in 20 years of marriage. Someone with my access credentials had systematically looted our most valuable intellectual property.
Someone who knew my schedule.
My routines, my security protocols. Someone who shared my bed and kissed me goodbye every morning. I printed the correlation analysis with trembling hands, the laser printer's mechanical whir sounding like a death rattle in the quiet server room. The pages fell into the output tray like pieces of my shattered life. Timestamps, file sizes, transfer logs, all painting a picture of calculated theft. The cooling systems hummed their eternal song around me, but for the first time in my career, the server room felt cold. Not just the regulated 68 degrees, cold in my bones, in my soul, in the hollow space where trust used to live. My reflection stared back from the black laptop screen, ghostly and hollow-eyed. The server room's fluorescent lights cast harsh shadows across my face, making me look like a stranger. 20 years of marriage, and I was sitting in a cold data center at 3 a.m, building a case against my own wife. I opened an encrypted folder on my personal drive, one Amber would never find. Evidence. I typed at the top of a new document, then stared at the cursor, blinking like a heartbeat. Each keystroke felt like hammering nails into a coffin. October 15th. Unauthorized access at 2:47 a.m. Amber claimed overtime until 11 p.m. March 20th. 847 gigabytes transfer initiated at 3:15 a.m. Amber's calendar. Late client presentation. May 18th. Server breach at 2:22 a.m. Amber returned home at 10:45 p.m., claiming exhaustion. The methodical technician in me catalogued every violation, every suspicious timestamp, every correlation that screamed betrayal. But the husband kept searching for alternatives. Maybe someone had cloned my badge. Maybe the system clocks were wrong. Maybe there was some explanation that didn't involve the woman I loved systematically destroying everything I'd worked for. The coffee in my thermos had gone cold hours ago, but I kept sipping it anyway. Bitter, like everything else tonight. Dawn light crept through the small windows near the server room ceiling, painting the endless rows of humming machines in pale gray. My pile of printouts grew higher, evidence of a crime I desperately wanted to disprove. But the logs don't lie. They never do. 3 days later, I discovered something that made the unauthorized access look like child's play. While running routine backup verification on the Prometheus servers, I found modified AI algorithms that shouldn't exist. Experimental code representing years of neural tech's research and development altered with surgical precision. The file modification dates matched my breach logs perfectly. I pulled up the original algorithms from our secure archive and compared them line by line. Whoever had done this understood both our systems and the value of what they were taking. They'd extracted the core neural network architecture while leaving behind enough functional code to avoid immediate detection. It was brilliant, methodical, and absolutely devastating. These algorithms represented millions in R&D investment, Neuraltech's competitive edge, stolen and modified for use elsewhere. My hands shook as I calculated the potential damage, not just financial, but strategic. Someone had handed our biggest competitor the keys to our kingdom. The cooling fans whirred around me, but I felt hot with rage and cold with fear. This wasn't just corporate espionage, this was the systematic dismantling of everything my team had built. I saved the comparison analysis to my encrypted folder and locked my workstation. Time to make the call I'd been dreading. Sitting in my car in the Neuraltech parking lot, I gripped the steering wheel and dialed Marcus Chen's number. The phone rang twice before his familiar voice answered. "Steve, everything okay? It's pretty early for a social call." I took a deep breath, tasting the metallic tang of fear. "Marcus, I need to report suspicious activity on our servers. Multiple unauthorized access attempts over the past 18 months. Silence stretched between us. I could hear traffic in the background on his end, probably driving to work himself. "Steve, those are serious allegations. Are you certain about your findings?" "The logs are clear. Someone with level 4 clearance has been accessing Prometheus servers during off hours. Systematic data extraction, algorithm modification, the works. I've got timestamps, file comparisons, the whole digital trail." Another pause.
Have you discussed this with anyone else?
"No. I wanted to brief security first, follow proper channels." The lie came easily. I couldn't tell him I suspected my own wife. "Not yet. Bring everything to my office at 9. Don't discuss this with anyone until we've reviewed your evidence." The weight of what I was setting in motion settled over me like a heavy blanket. Once I walked into Marcus's office, there would be no going back. Investigations, interviews, possibly federal involvement. And somewhere in that process, Amber's name would surface. "Understood," I said, and hung up. That evening, I pretended to read a technical manual while Amber worked at the kitchen table. She'd spread documents beside her laptop, occasionally glancing between her screen and the papers. Her fingers moved rapidly across the keyboard, completely absorbed in whatever project demanded her attention. When she stood to refill her wine glass, I caught a glimpse of her screen. Quantum Mind, AI. Internal emails filled the monitor, subject lines mentioning Project Minerva and Acquired Competitive Intelligence. My blood turned to ice water as I recognized terminology from Neuraltech's stolen algorithms embedded in their corporate communications. "Working late again?" I asked, keeping my voice casual. "Just finishing up some research analysis." She smiled warmly, settling back into her chair. "Nothing too exciting. Market trends, competitive positioning, you know how it is." I nodded and returned to my manual, but the words swam meaninglessly across the page. My wife was sitting 3 feet away, casually discussing the theft of my company's intellectual property like it was routine market research. The woman who'd kissed me goodbye this morning had just revealed herself as a corporate spy, completely unaware that her husband had witnessed her betrayal in real time. The kitchen felt smaller suddenly, the air thicker. I excused myself and went upstairs, needing distance from the crime scene masquerading as domestic tranquility. My investigation took an unexpected turn the next morning when I discovered a data breach report buried deep in our server logs. 2 years old, nearly forgotten in the endless stream of security alerts we processed daily. An attempted intrusion into Neuraltech's personnel database, not the technical systems, but employee records. The breach had targeted background information, specifically childhood histories and family details. My fingers trembled as I opened the compromised files, dreading what I might find. Among the accessed records, my own personnel file. The hacker had pulled everything: birth certificate, adoption records, placement history. Details about my time at St. Catherine's Orphanage in Austin. Information I'd never shared with anyone. Not my colleagues, not my friends, not even Amber.
The painful memories of growing up without parents,
Bouncing between foster homes until the orphanage took me in at age 12. I stared at the screen, my vision blurring. The breach timestamp showed March 15th, 2022, 6 months before I'd met Amber at that coffee shop downtown, where she'd seemed so charmed by my shy awkwardness, so patient with my reluctance to discuss my past. The realization hit like a physical blow. She'd known. Before our first date, before our first kiss, before I'd fallen in love with her understanding smile, she'd researched me like a target. Every moment of our courtship, every tender conversation about my trust issues, every gentle encouragement to open my heart. It had all been performance, based on stolen intelligence about my deepest vulnerabilities.
my fingers trembled.
As I traced the data transfer logs on my workstation screen. The destination IP addresses weren't random. They formed a pattern, pointing to specific servers in Palo Alto, California. Quantum Mind AI's corporate headquarters. I leaned back in my chair, the familiar squeak echoing through the empty data center. The timestamp correlation couldn't be coincidence. Every single unauthorized access occurred during Amber's supposed overtime shifts at her marketing job. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead as I stared at the evidence, feeling the familiar weight of my security badge against my chest. 23 separate breaches, all using my credentials. My throat went dry as I pulled up the detailed transfer logs. Each breach showed surgical precision, specific file paths, exact algorithm modules, targeted neural network code bases. This wasn't some script kiddie randomly grabbing data. Someone knew exactly what they were looking for. Someone with intimate knowledge of both systems. The server room felt suffocating as I pulled up Quantum Mind AI's corporate website. My hands shook as I navigated to the employee directory, dreading what I might find. The loading icon spun for what felt like hours. There, under Senior AI Research Team, Amber Kowalski's professional headshot smiled back at me. Not marketing, AI research. The same field as Neuraltech's stolen algorithms. Senior researcher since January 2022, the bio read. The exact month the data breaches began. My vision blurred as I read her credentials. PhD in machine learning from Stanford, previous experience at 3 major tech companies, specialization in neural network architecture. The cooling fans whirred louder as my world crumbled.
She'd been lying about her job for 3 years.
Every morning when she left for work, every evening when she came home complaining about marketing campaigns and client presentations. All lies. I scrolled down to her project assignments. Project Minerva, Advanced AI Development Team Lead. My blood turned to ice. I'd heard that name before. My fingers flew across the keyboard, pulling up Neuraltech's internal development database. There it was, Project Prometheus, our flagship AI initiative. The algorithms that made our company worth $50 million. The same algorithms that had been systematically stolen over the past 2 years. The pattern was becoming clear. Prometheus at Neuraltech. Minerva at Quantum Mind. Greek mythology. Prometheus stole fire from the gods. Minerva was the goddess of wisdom and warfare. How poetic.
My stomach lurched.
As I accessed the forensic logs Patricia Valdez had shared with corporate security. The stolen data wasn't random files. It was Neuraltech's crown jewel, the Prometheus AI algorithms worth $2.8 million. Each transfer showed surgical precision, targeting specific neural network code bases that would give quantum mind AI a devastating competitive advantage. The timestamps told the story. March 15th, 2022, Neural Network Foundation Code. April 3rd, 2022, Machine Learning Optimization Algorithms. May 18th, 2022, Advanced Pattern Recognition Modules. Each theft perfectly timed with Quantum Mind's development milestones. My wife hadn't just betrayed me, she'd orchestrated the systematic destruction of my employer. The data center's emergency lighting cast eerie shadows as I realized the scope of her deception. This wasn't opportunistic theft,
This was calculated corporate warfare.
I pulled up archived news articles about Quantum Mind AI's recent product launches, cross-referencing them with Neuraltech's internal development timelines. The dates aligned with mathematical precision. Every major breakthrough Quantum Mind announced came exactly 6 months after the corresponding Neuraltech code was stolen. Project Minerva, Quantum Mind's breakthrough AI platform announced 6 months ago, contained algorithms identical to Neuraltech's proprietary code. The press release boasted about revolutionary neural network architecture and unprecedented pattern recognition capabilities. Our algorithms, our 3 years of research and development, our competitive advantage. Amber hadn't just stolen data, she'd delivered it perfectly timed for maximum market impact. The server room felt like a tomb as I understood the full picture.
My security clearance,
My marriage, my entire life had been weaponized against my own company. I thought about David Brennan, our CEO, announcing the Prometheus project delays last month. Technical challenges, he'd called them. Now I knew the truth. We couldn't compete with our own stolen technology. The forensic data revealed more devastating details, payment records buried deep in cryptocurrency transactions. My hands shook violently as I traced the money trail. $127,000 in total payments from Quantum Mind AI directly to a digital wallet registered under Amber's name. Bonus payments, performance incentives. She'd been paid for each successful theft. The fluorescent lights flickered as nausea overwhelmed me. Our anniversary dinner last month, she'd insisted on the expensive restaurant, ordering the $200 wine pairing without checking prices.
she'd paid with cash.
Claiming it was from marketing bonuses. Blood money. Every gift, every vacation, every moment of our life together had been funded by her betrayal of everything I stood for. I remembered her new car last year. The marketing department got a great quarterly bonus, she'd said, keys jingling as she showed off the BMW. The down payment must have come from selling out my colleagues, my company, my professional integrity. The weight of it all pressed down on my chest like a server rack. 20 years in this industry, building my reputation one cable run at a time, one system upgrade at a time, one midnight emergency fix at a time. And my own wife had used my access to destroy everything I'd worked for. The server room's ambient temperature felt colder now, the familiar hum of cooling systems sounding like a funeral dirge. I stared at the screens full of evidence, each data point another nail in the coffin of my marriage. But something else was building inside me. Something colder than betrayal, sharper than anger. The same methodical focus I brought to troubleshooting critical system failures. The logs don't lie. They tell you exactly what happened and when. And now I knew exactly what had happened. The moments stretched into eternity as I sat surrounded by the evidence of my wife's betrayal. The server room's familiar blue LED lights cast everything in an otherworldly glow, making the forensic data on my screens look like something from a crime drama. But this wasn't television. This was my life, systematically dissected and displayed in neat columns of timestamps and file transfers. I pulled up the payment records again, tracing each cryptocurrency transaction with forensic precision. March 22nd, 2022. $15,000 payment, 2 days after she'd accessed the Prometheus neural network files. April 8th, another $12,500, perfectly timed with the theft of our pattern recognition algorithms. The correlation was so precise, it made my stomach turn. My hands moved across the keyboard with muscle memory, copying files to encrypted drives while my mind processed the implications. Every late night she'd claimed to be working on marketing campaigns, she'd actually been here, in my domain, using my credentials to rob my colleagues blind. The server room door's magnetic lock clicked, making me freeze. Footsteps echoed down the hallway, measured, deliberate. I minimized the forensic windows and pulled up routine maintenance logs, my pulse hammering against my collar. "Steve?" Amber's voice drifted through the reinforced glass. "I saw your car in the parking lot." "Working late again?" My blood turned to ice water. She wasn't supposed to be here. Ever. The data center was restricted access only, and her visitor badge had expired months ago. Yet here she was, somehow inside a secure facility at 11:30 p.m. "Just finishing up some diagnostics," I called back, my voice surprisingly steady. The cooling systems hummed around us as she approached my workstation, her heels clicking against the raised floor tiles. She looked different in the server room's harsh lighting, sharper, more calculating. The expensive blazer she wore seemed out of place among the industrial equipment, like she was playing dress-up in my world. "You've been spending a lot of time here lately," she said, leaning against the server rack. Her manicured fingers traced the cable management with casual familiarity that made my skin crawl. "Finding anything interesting in those logs?" The question hung in the air like a challenge. I watched her reflection in my monitor, studying her expression for any tell. But her face remained perfectly neutral, professionally curious. "The usual stuff," I replied, closing the maintenance window. "Backup verification, system integrity checks. Nothing that would interest you." She moved closer, her perfume mixing with the ozone smell of electronic equipment. "Oh, I don't know about that. I've always been fascinated by your work, honey. The way you can read those logs like a story, finding patterns in all that data." Her voice carried a strange undertone, not quite threatening, but definitely probing, like she was testing how much I knew. "It's just troubleshooting," I said, powering down my workstation. "Same as always." But Amber didn't move away. Instead, she pulled up a chair and sat down beside me, her proximity making the confined space feel claustrophobic. "Steve, we need to talk." The words hit me like a system failure alert. Direct, unavoidable, final. "About what?" I asked, though we both knew the answer. She studied my face with the same analytical precision I used on server logs. "About what you found. About what you think you understand." The admission hung between us like a live wire. She knew. Somehow, she knew I'd uncovered her operation. "I don't know what you mean," I said, but the lie felt hollow in the sterile air. Amber's laugh was soft, almost affectionate. "Oh, sweetie, you're many things, but you're not a good liar. I can see it in your eyes, that look you get when you've solved a particularly complex problem." She reached across and touched my hand, her skin warm against my suddenly cold fingers.
You found the server logs, didn't you?
"The access records that match my schedule." My mouth went dry. "Amber, it's okay," she whispered, squeezing my hand. "I know this is overwhelming, but before you say anything, before you make any decisions you can't take back, I need you to understand something." The server room's ambient noise seemed to fade as she leaned closer, her voice taking on that honey-sweet tone I'd once found comforting. "Everything I did, every risk I took, every choice I made, it was for us, for our future together, for Dylan's future." The mention of our son made my chest tighten. "You stole from my company. You used my credentials to commit corporate espionage." "I secured our family's financial future," she corrected, her grip on my hand becoming firmer. "Do you know what they pay AI researchers at Quantum Mind?"
What kind of opportunities this opens up for us?
I stared at her, seeing a stranger wearing my wife's face. "You researched me before we met. The coffee shop, our first date. None of it was real." Her expression softened, but her eyes remained calculating. "The feelings were real, Steve. What we built together, what we have with Dylan, that's all real. The rest is just strategic positioning." Strategic positioning. The words tasted bitter. "Is that what you call destroying my career?" "I call it leveraging our assets for maximum return," she said, her voice taking on a corporate edge. "Your security clearance, my technical expertise, the market timing. It was a perfect convergence of opportunities." The fluorescent lights flickered overhead as I processed her words. She wasn't apologizing. She wasn't even acknowledging wrongdoing. In her mind, she'd simply optimized our situation using available resources. "The money," I said quietly. "The payments from Quantum Mind. How long has this been going on?" Amber's smile was almost proud. "Since March 2022. $340,000 in total compensation, not counting the signing bonus they'll pay when I officially transfer departments next month." "Transfer departments?" "Quantum Mind offered me a senior researcher position. Triple my current salary, stock options, full relocation package to Palo Alto." She squeezed my hand again. "We could start fresh, Steve. New city, new opportunities. Dylan could go to private school." The server room felt like it was spinning. "You're asking me to relocate based on money you earned by stealing from my employer. I'm asking you to think about our son's future, instead of some abstract corporate loyalty," she said, her voice hardening slightly.
Neuraltech doesn't care about you, honey.
"You're just another technician to them. Replaceable." Her words hit like a physical blow, but I kept my voice level. "And what about federal charges? Economic espionage carries serious prison time." Amber's laugh was dismissive. "Only if they can prove intent and damages. Corporate data transfers happen constantly in this industry without concrete evidence of deliberate theft." "I have the evidence," I said quietly. The silence that followed was deafening. Even the server fans seemed to quiet as Amber's expression shifted from confident to wary. "What evidence?" she asked, her voice carefully neutral. I gestured toward my workstation. "Server logs, transfer records, payment trails, timeline correlations. Everything the FBI would need to build a federal case." Her hand slipped away from mine as she leaned back in her chair. For the first time since she'd arrived, she looked genuinely uncertain. "Steve," she said slowly, "you need to be very careful about what you do with that information. Think about Dylan. Think about our family. Think about what happens if this becomes public. The threat was subtle, but unmistakable. She was reminding me that destroying her would destroy our son's stability, our shared life, everything we'd built together. But as I looked at her sitting in my server room, surrounded by the equipment she'd used to betray everything I stood for, I realized something had fundamentally changed. The woman I'd married, or thought I'd married, didn't exist. She never had. "I need time to think," I said finally. Amber nodded, but her eyes remained watchful. "Of course, this is a lot to process. But remember, honey, we're a team. We always have been. Whatever decision you make, we'll face the consequences together." She stood up, smoothing her blazer with practiced efficiency. "I'll see you at home. Don't stay too late." As her footsteps faded down the corridor, I sat alone among the humming servers, staring at the blank screen that contained enough evidence to destroy my wife's life. The weight of the decision pressed down on me like the data center's climate control system, constant, inescapable, essential for keeping everything from overheating. The logs don't lie, I thought. They tell you exactly what happened and when. Now I had to decide what to do about it. The server room hummed with its eternal mechanical rhythm as I checked my watch. 2:30 a.m. 6 monitors blazed before me, each screen telling a piece of the story I'd spent 3 weeks assembling. Transfer logs cascaded down one display in green text. Badge scan records filled another. Financial transactions glowed on a third. Cryptocurrency payments that traced back to Quantum Mind AI's corporate wallet. My hands rested steady on the keyboard now. No more trembling like those first nights when I discovered the unauthorized access patterns. The fluorescent lights cast harsh shadows between the server racks, creating a maze of black and white that somehow felt appropriate. Truth and lies, light and shadow. The outer door's keycard reader beeped. I didn't turn around, didn't need to. The security log on monitor 4 showed Amber's badge scan at 2:32 a.m. Her heels clicked against the raised floor tiles, each step echoing in the climate-controlled silence. The cooling systems cycled up, preparing for another night of processing data. Legitimate data this time. "Working late again?" Amber's voice carried its usual confident tone, but I caught the slight waver when she saw the monitors. I rotated my chair slowly, the way I'd practiced in my head for days. Her silhouette stood framed in the doorway, designer coat draped over one arm, purse clutched in manicured fingers. The same hands that had inserted USB drives into our most secure systems. March 15th, 2:47 a.m. I pointed to monitor 2, where her employee photo sat next to my level 4 security credentials. "Your badge. My clearance." The white noise of spinning drives filled the silence between us. Amber's confident mask slipped, just for a moment, before she stepped forward.
"Steve, I can explain."
847 gigabytes. My voice stayed level, steady as the machines surrounding us. 23 separate transfers, every single one during my scheduled patrol rounds. I stood and moved to the first monitor, my steel-toed boots silent on the anti-static flooring. Want to see the pattern? The evidence glowed in neat columns. Dates, times, file sizes. Each entry a small betrayal that added up to corporate espionage worth $2.8 million. Amber's face went pale in the monitor light. "Quantum Mind AI," I continued, stepping to the next screen. "Project Minerva, your real employer." Her purse slipped from her fingers, hitting the floor with a soft thud. Inside, I knew, was the RFID cloning device she'd used to duplicate my security badge. The same device Patricia Valdez had photographed as evidence 3 days ago.
Steve, you don't understand the pressure I was under.
Pressure? I moved to Monitor 3, where cryptocurrency transactions painted their own story. $340,000 in bonus payments, 14 separate deposits to your digital wallet. The cooling fans seemed to roar louder as Amber's composure finally crumbled. Her carefully constructed facade, the supportive wife, the marketing professional working late shifts, dissolved like corrupted data. "You researched me before we met," I said, my finger tracing the timeline on screen 4. "The orphanage records, my background check. You knew exactly what security clearance I'd have before our first coffee date." "That's not—" She stepped toward the keyboard, but I blocked her path. "It's already backed up to federal servers." My voice stayed calm, professional. The same tone I used when explaining system failures to management.
Robert Singh has copies.
Patricia Valdez has copies. The FBI cybercrime unit has everything. Amber collapsed into the spare chair, the fight leaving her body like air from a punctured server cabinet. The designer coat fell to the floor beside her purse. For the first time in 12 years of marriage, she looked small. "Dylan will hate us both," she whispered. The mention of our 8-year-old son hit harder than any technical evidence. I thought of him sleeping peacefully at home, unaware that his world was about to shatter like a corrupted hard drive. The server lights continued their eternal blinking, green for normal operation, red for critical alerts. "He'll hate lies more than truth," I said, reaching for my phone. My wedding ring caught the monitor light as I scrolled to Robert Singh's contact. The FBI, cybercrime specialist, had been waiting for this call since our meeting last Tuesday. 3 rings, then his familiar voice. "It's Steve Kowalski. She's here." "Location confirmed?" "Server room B7, Neural Tech Data Center, 4200 Innovation Drive. Units are en route. Stay with her until we arrive." I hung up and looked at the woman who'd shared my bed, raised my son, and stolen my professional identity. 12 years of marriage reduced to evidence files and federal charges. "Why?" I asked simply. Amber raised her head, meeting my eyes for the first time since entering the room. Her makeup had smudged, revealing the exhaustion beneath her polished exterior. "Because I could," she said, her honesty finally cutting through months of manipulation. The servers continued their endless calculations, processing legitimate data, while we sat surrounded by the proof of betrayal.
20 minutes felt like 20 hours
Before I heard footsteps in the corridor outside. Patricia Valdez entered first, her corporate security badge catching the fluorescent light. 2 FBI agents followed, their presence transforming our sterile workplace into a crime scene. The lead agent, a woman with graying hair and tired eyes, approached Amber's chair. "Mrs. Kowalski, you're under arrest for violation of the Economic Espionage Act." I watched them read her rights in the hallway outside the server room, Amber's designer heels clicking against concrete as they escorted her toward the elevator. She didn't look back, didn't say goodbye, just walked away like deleted data, leaving only empty space where she used to be. The building's night security guard, an older man named Frank, who'd worked here longer than I'd been alive, nodded sympathetically as I returned to my workstation.
"Rough night?" he asked.
"The roughest," I replied, but my voice carried relief instead of grief. The monitors still displayed the evidence that had destroyed my marriage and saved my career. Green text scrolled across black screens, each line a testament to methodical investigation and professional integrity. My security clearance remained intact. My conscience was clear. The investigation was over. I walked to my car at 4 a.m., the parking lot empty except for the FBI vehicles and Patricia Valdez's sedan. The October air bit through my work shirt as I pulled out my phone. Marcus Chen answered on the second ring, his voice alert despite the hour. "Steve, everything okay?" "It's over. FBI arrested Amber an hour ago." The words felt strange in my mouth, like speaking a foreign language. "Jesus, are you all right?" "Yeah."
Better than all right, actually.
I leaned against my truck's tailgate, watching the last FBI agent load evidence boxes. "My security review?" "Officially closed as of right now. Full clearance restored." Marcus paused. "You did the right thing, Steve. Couldn't have been easy." "The logs don't lie," I said, echoing my own words from weeks ago. They told me exactly what happened and when. The morning shift started trickling into the parking lot around 5:30 a.m. Dave, from Network Operations, parked next to the remaining FBI vehicle, his eyes wide as he walked toward the building. Inside, I was shutting down the evidence displays when he found me in server room B7. "What's with all the federal agents?" he asked, nodding toward the hallway. "Just some security issues," I replied, watching the last traces of stolen data disappear from my monitors.
Nothing that affects operations.
My hands were steady as I powered down the systems. 3 weeks ago, discovering those first anomalous backup logs had sent tremors through my fingers. Now, closing the investigation felt as routine as any other maintenance task. The servers resumed their normal hum, processing legitimate data with mechanical honesty. I drove home through empty streets, rehearsing conversations I'd never wanted to have. Dylan would be waking up soon, getting ready for school. 8 years old, was too young to understand corporate espionage, but old enough to know when a parent disappears. The house felt different when I walked in, lighter somehow, like a corrupted file had been deleted from the system. Dylan sat at the kitchen table in his pajamas, eating cereal and swinging his legs. His backpack waited by the door, homework folder neatly tucked inside.
"Morning, buddy,"
I said, pouring coffee from the pot Amber had started before leaving for her midnight shift. The irony wasn't lost on me. "Where's Mom?" Dylan asked between spoonfuls of cereal. I sat down across from him, choosing my words carefully. "She made some bad choices at work. She won't be coming home for a while." Dylan's spoon paused halfway to his mouth. "Is she sick?" "No. She took things that didn't belong to her." The 8-year-old directness in his eyes demanded honesty. "From my work." "Will she go to jail?" The question hit like a physical blow. "Probably." Dylan nodded solemnly, processing this information with the same methodical approach I'd taught him for math homework. Then he slid off his chair and wrapped his arms around my waist. "Are you in trouble too?" "No, buddy. Daddy told the truth." Morning sunlight streamed through the kitchen window, illuminating the empty space where Amber's coffee cup used to sit. Some routines would change forever. Others, like making Dylan's lunch and walking him to the school bus, would continue with mechanical reliability. My phone buzzed around noon. Jennifer Walsh, my attorney, her voice crisp and professional. "Criminal charges expedite everything," she explained. "I can have divorce papers ready by this afternoon. Custody won't be an issue given the circumstances." I signed the documents at my kitchen table while Dylan worked on math problems nearby, his pencil scratching against notebook paper. He drew pictures in the margins, computers and servers, processing his father's world in crayon and graphite. "Will we move?" he asked, without looking up from his homework.
"No, this is our home."
I looked around the house we'd bought together 5 years ago. The mortgage was manageable on my salary alone, and Dylan's school district was good. Stability mattered more than square footage. "Good," Dylan said, erasing a mistake with careful precision. "I like my room." 3 months later, I sat in federal court, watching Amber receive 8 years for economic espionage and corporate theft. She wore an orange jumpsuit instead of designer business attire, her hands cuffed behind her back as the judge read the sentence. I felt neither satisfaction nor sorrow, just the quiet relief of a system working correctly. David Brennan from Neuraltech found me in the courthouse hallway afterward, extending his hand with genuine gratitude. "You saved our company," he said. "The stolen algorithms could have destroyed us." "I just did my job," I replied, meaning it.
Outside the courthouse,
I breathed deeply. The legal system, like my servers, had processed inputs and delivered outputs. Sometimes the results hurt, but they were accurate. Justice had the same mechanical beauty as a perfectly functioning network. Back at work, I found comfort in the predictable rhythms of night shift maintenance. The servers never lied, never manipulated, never betrayed trust. They processed data with mechanical honesty that humans rarely achieved. My new security badge photo showed a man who'd aged years in months, but his eyes were clear. Marcus Chen offered me a promotion to day shift supervisor the following week. Better pay, regular hours, more interaction with the engineering teams. "Thanks, but I like the quiet hours," I declined. Night shift suited me now. Fewer people, more machines. The balance felt right, for the first time in years. Dylan adapted with the resilience of childhood, visiting his mother once a month at the federal facility in Austin. I never spoke ill of Amber, letting him form his own judgments. On quiet Sunday mornings, we worked together in my home lab, a spare bedroom filled with old computers and networking equipment. "Computers are honest, aren't they, Dad?" Dylan observed, watching his first simple program execute flawlessly. "Always," I confirmed. "They process exactly what you tell them to, nothing more, nothing less." Some lessons were worth learning early. Truth had a mechanical beauty that deception lacked. Now, 6 months later, I walk through server room B7 during my nightly rounds. The same monitors that once displayed evidence of betrayal now show normal operations. Green lights, stable temperatures, optimal performance metrics. The investigation consumed 3 weeks of my life, but my methodical approach had protected both my job and my son's future. I checked the backup logs one final time before heading home. Clean data, legitimate transfers, no anomalies. The servers hummed their eternal song of processed information, and for the first time in years, I trust the music completely. Some systems are more reliable than people. Some truths are worth the cost of discovering them.